built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Say you don't know me. I recognize my face.
Is it only 11 years after Hyperdrive? Welcome to the premiere of Part 7. When we last left off, we had just closed the chapter on the Jefferson Starship LP catalog, following the lawsuit by Paul Kantner. The remaining 6 members were permitted to carry on under the name Starship. And 1985, their first release, Knee Deep in the Hoopla. This was produced by Peter Wolf, and there were some other names listed on the production, but it was really a Peter Wolf thing here. So seeing about 5 different names listed under the production really just shows that it didn't take long for there to be many cooks in the kitchen, and in many different ways, and none of them were band members. A transformation has taken place. The LP produced, it was for the first time since 1975, it reached platinum. The band reached platinum status. 1975's Red Octopus, 10 years earlier, went double platinum, and this one went to platinum. It reached number 7 on the Billboard charts. And out of the LP, of the 4 singles released, there were 2 number 1 hits. We Built This City and Sarah. There was another top 40 hit, clocking in at number 26 on the charts, Tomorrow Doesn't Matter Tonight. And the 4th single was a song called Desperate Heart. And that was also a top 100, clocking in at, I believe number 66 on the charts. Let's take a look at the personnel on this one. So you do have 3 original JS members still intact here on the bass guitars, and now the synth bass. Pete Sears, I mentioned, returned. Craig Jaquiso back on the lead guitar and other guitars. Rhythm guitar replacing Paul Kantner. And then, of course, Grace Slick also was back on the lead vocals. Mickey Thomas is now the de facto leader of this band, returning on the vocals. And then you have Donnie Baldwin. Drums, electronic drums, and vocals. Let's see what else. So we actually have pictures for the first time since modern times. And let's see. Here's the liner note there. Liner page. Alright. There we go. Bigger pictures of each member. Also wanted to point out that Pete Sears is a little bit ahead of his time with the 2 different sneakers there. Kind of popular with some of the kids these days, but alright, so there's a bigger picture right there of the members of Starship. So I mentioned that there were the 6 remaining members. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, where the hell is David Freiberg? Well, David Freiberg was technically a member of Starship. Following the big change, he made the decision to go with the remaining members. Now, when they were in the early stages of working through the song "We Built This City," he did not like the arrangement of it, and he would in later years, would say he liked the song. He's even performed it, strangely enough, live in JS shows recently. But at this time, I mentioned that we had a lot of different producers. You have Peter Wolf. You have a lot of different hands coming into this band, and synthesizers are starting to become at play here. And so the band considered David Freiberg dead weight. In fact, Grace Slick even said to the rest of the members of the band privately, and I quote, "Let's fire David Freiberg. He doesn't contribute anything. Why are we paying him?" Ouch. So it was soon after that he left. Either they fired him or he left, but he is not on the credits, or he did not record at all on any of these songs. So David Freiberg is now gone. You have Kantner gone, and now you have David Freiberg, one of the original members, hitting the skids. And so I guess we say goodbye to him now, and he goes all the way back to a couple of the early 70s Airplane LPs, Long John Silver and Bark, and he was also on the Kantner Slick solo project, Baron von Tolbooth, where his name is actually mentioned as the artist. It's those 3. So there was a long friendship there. And he was, of course, he was on all of the JS LPs. Probably the best thing he did was when he found lightning in a bottle when he wrote the song Jane. And he was pressured a little bit after that to come up with something else, and he didn't even bother to, because he knew he was kind of limited as far as a songwriter. I felt like he was maybe a little underutilized, because he's a kind of an underrated voice. I thought that they could have used him at least on the Dragonfly LP, maybe in a spot, having him do one lead part, since there was Marty Ballin wasn't really in the band. You only had Grace, and of course Paul doing a little bit of vocals. But other than that, David Freiberg, he's, as far as JS goes, he's probably the least recognizable of all of the people who ever perform in the band. Probably the weakest link, I would say. That doesn't mean he's a bad musician. He's a good old school musician. Like I said, a good voice, and he's still, ironically enough, he's still left in JS today, performing with JS. Speaking of the 5 remaining members, here's a little something extra for you guys. It's a autographed Knee Deep in the Hoopla LP by all the members right there. This doesn't have the LP in it. It doesn't have the sleeve. It's just a cutout of the, just a cover with the autographs in a plastic sleeve. Okay, so let's talk about the song. So going back to the last JS album, Nuclear Furniture, producer Peter Wolf, he didn't produce this album, but he was involved in it, and he really started to worm his way into the band. I don't mean that in a negative way. Peter Wolf's a good music producer, but he did the first, of course he wrote No Way Out, but the first 2 songs on the LP landed on the line, and No Way Out. These bear no resemblance whatsoever to previous JS songs. Make no mistake, those two songs are Starship songs. I already talked about how No Way Out is a like a prequel to the song Sarah. Okay, well, both of those songs, you could stick them on any Starship LP. Well, I'll say the first two Starship LPs, and they would blend in perfectly to those albums. Okay, and the sound of those songs continue on Knee Deep in the Hoopla. Alright, so for the song titles, I'm going to key in here on the vinyl itself, on the label, because the inner sleeves don't show the songwriting credits. So the first song was a single called We Built This City. I'm sure you're all familiar with. This was written by Elton John's longtime songwriter, Bernie Taupin. Most music fans are familiar with him. Martin Page was in on that writing too. Martin Page is a prolific songwriter, and he's gonna be mentioned later as we get into these Starship videos. He becomes a big part of the band. A guy named Dennis Lambert, and then Peter Wolf. But it was mostly Bernie Taupin. Okay, so with that song, they achieved something that Jefferson Airplane nor Jefferson Starship had accomplished in their long history, and that's producing a #1 single. So the members of Starship felt vindicated by this. Obviously it was a commercial blockbuster LP, and that's what they had been shooting for. Paul Kantner even said that when this happened, in his words, this was a dose of humility that I needed at the time. And speaking of Paul Kantner, he did not sit around and mope about it for long. In the same year, he formed the KBC band. Stands for Kantner, Ballin, Cassidy. Let me get the liner notes out here. Okay, there we go. And so they lasted from 1985 to 1987. This was the only album that came out. It didn't really do anything. It sounded a lot like... There's a song on there called America that they played some, but it sounded a lot like Nuclear Furniture, if you want to know the truth. They actually had a tour for it, I think for maybe a year and a half or something like that. And so you have Paul Kantner there, you have Marty Ballin, whom we haven't mentioned on these videos since Earth. And then, I wanted to point this out to you. The drummer here is a guy named Daryl Verduzco. Daryl Verduzco is currently, well, since 1993, the drummer for Starship featuring Mickey Thomas. So there's a current picture of his lineup there. Mickey's right there with the sunglasses, and here's Daryl Verduzco on the far right, the drummer. Looking a little bit like Ace Dog. So just when you think the history of this band cannot have any more rabbit trails and branches, there's just another one right there. In the formation, I'll just add this. The formation of the KBC band is kind of the unofficial beginning, and this is 1985. It's kind of the unofficial beginning of where you see the two parallel universes in the Starship galaxy start to kind of overlap each other. Really, in 1989, when Jefferson Airplane reformed for a tour, is really when it started. From then till the present moment as we speak. And It's a lot like Back to the Future Part 2, where Marty is back at the dance and he's watching him, a version of himself playing guitar, and he's trying not to bump into like another version of himself, or versions of his parents or some of his friends or some of his enemies. It's the exact same thing as, for example, if in 1985 Paul Kantner and Daryl Verduzco decided, hey, let's go check out a show on the Knee Deep in the Hoopla tour, and then went to an autograph session right afterwards to meet all the band members in Starship. If that had happened, you would have this whole alternate timeline that would be created where Donnie Baldwin is sleeping with Grace, and they have a kid together, and Papa John Creech is singing lead vocals on "Find Your Way Back." So this is why I can't stop being obsessed with the history of the JAJS Starship Legacy. All right, so here's a clip of Daytona Beach and MTV Live. The band Starship playing live. Mickey Thomas, some beach behind them. Craig Chaquiso, Donnie Baldwin. Just like on the album cover, the only way I can explain the clothes is that it's 1985. There's a little interview afterwards.
Tell me, how do you feel about the spring break audience?
There's Pete Sears way up there in the background. Ever the company man.
I'm gonna be one of the Indians. No.
They look healthy. That's my problem. Is I look like they're all tan and healthy.
I will say that the crowd here was great. They were wonderful. I didn't see anybody throwing things, and nobody seemed to get hurt. And I have done a
The guy right here is a touring member who did keyboards and saxophone. But as you can see, with the release of We Built This City and the new sound, they had accomplished what they set out to do and what they had been trying to do for the last couple of albums, but unsuccessfully. And that was to get the new audience. You can see that in the crowd. They're entertaining teenagers and people in their 20s. The MTV crowd. At this point, they've pretty much alienated the baby boomers, and they were fine with that. And Mickey's wife at the time, by the way, Her name was Sarah. Just a little something there to throw in. The third song was called Tomorrow Doesn't Matter Tonight, and that was also released as a single, and it was another top 40 hit. It went to number 26 on the charts. So We Built This City is good. I'm fine with it. It's a decent, catchy song. Sarah, I think I like a little bit better than that. Yeah, I would say it's my favorite one on the album. Tomorrow Doesn't Matter Tonight. I've never been a big fan of this one, but I will say that of the three big hits on the LP, Tomorrow Doesn't Matter Tonight is the best utilization of Mickey's voice. You really see him using it to its fullest in that song. The fourth one is called. By the way, that was written by Stephen Crystal and Robin Randall. The fourth one was Rock Myself to Sleep. And I'm telling you, this was a Grace Slick, a song where she's singing lead. And they really tried to make this something big. They shoehorned it into the concerts, and it is just an embarrassing number, to be honest. There's just nothing good about this song. It's unfortunate that they had to put this one on here. Desperate Heart is probably the fourth or fifth best song on this LP. It's a ballad. It's Michael Bolton was the main songwriter on this one, and he actually recorded this one on an LP in the 80s. Another thing about going back to Rock Myself to Sleep, this actually had it, let's see it right there. Additional vocal by Kevin Dubrow, who was then the Quiet Riot lead singer. I don't know what the connection was there, but something that most people don't know about. And additional background vocals on Desperate Heart was Dave Jenkins. Not sure who that is, but Desperate Heart's a pretty good ballad. On side B, this is where it gets kind of shaky. Private Room. So the only thing notable about Private Room is that it is the only song on this entire LP that has writing credits from members of the band. And that is a major change from all of the LPs of JS. And that really shows you that just what a change in 1 year can make. Before I Go, written by David Roberts. I don't think that's the same Dave Roberts that had that steal off of the Yankees in Game 4 of the 2004 ALCS, but it's not a very good song. Before I Go was released as a single. I mentioned it hit the top 100. I mentioned earlier in this video it's 66. It was actually number 68 on the charts. And it is not a good song. It's over long for one. It's too schmaltzy. It's just got a dreadful bridge in there. And I used to like it the first time I heard it, but my goodness gracious. It is just not I would not recommend listening to this. Before I Go. And I would say the same about the song Hearts the World Will Understand. Again, you just see these unknown songwriters coming in. Stephen Lunt and Arthur Steed. Hearts the World Will Understand is mostly Grace Slick singing on there. And it's got this like spoken part by Slick that's equally embarrassing against another one you just skip over. The one thing I like about Private Room that's kind of interesting about it, besides the Craig Chiquiso, Mickey Thomas writing credit, is it always makes me think about America Online. They'd have the private room categories there. So anyway, all right, the final song is Love Rust, and coming back is Bernie Taupin and Martin Page. This was a pretty decent song. This one, I believe, it's a ballad. They're utilizing the Slick and Thomas duet thing that would really help them on the next album. And I believe this could have been possibly even a top 40 hit if they had cut out. There's this long music outro at the end of this song that is just a real waste of space. But the rest of it is really a solid. It's a solid ballad. It's probably the fourth or fifth best song on the album. All right. The best ballad besides Sarah on the album. Before I Go and Desperate Heart are very similar. Desperate Heart is a little better. All right, another thing I'd like to mention about the track listings. This is the 1999 re-release, remastered, whatever you call it, of Knee Deep in the Hoopla that nobody asked for. The only difference between this one and the previous one is besides the remastering, is it's got a little insert here where it's got a thing talking about Grace Slick, and it's kind of it kind of goes through the history of the band there. But it also has a track that was not included on the original. It's called Casualty. And that's really the only reason I got this thing, and it's a Grace Slick song that she sang, and it's just it's a real waste. It just sounds like something that would have been on one of her solo albums. I'm not gonna count this version of the CD of the album when I do my final rankings of all the LPs, but if I did, that would have brought this down lower than it already is. Okay. All right, so make no mistake, this has become a corporate band. Grace Slick herself was, in her words, said, she knew the ropes. All the band members here, they weren't old, but they were, mid-30s. She was actually was going to be pushing 50 by the time she left, but veteran enough to know how things work, and she was happy herself just to be going along with the riding out the success and punching in her time card, doing the albums, doing the shows, and you saw that in the clip there earlier. She was just happy to go along for the ride, and but this album itself is they had all these outside writers, and Peter Wolf pulled from a carefully selected from a pool of these outside songs that were coming in for them to record. And it's been said that he did a magnificent job of the ones that he selected, and I disagree with that. The first three, they kind of blow their load there at the beginning. They have three really good songs, or hits anyway, and after that it gets very spotty from there. So this is not an album I like very much. Starship thanks, especially like to thank the people, the places, and the things, and I'd like to thank you all for tuning in tonight to this premiere of Knee Deep in the Hoopla. We will fade out with Love Rust, which sounds a lot like something that would be on the LP No Protection. That's gonna be the next premiere. See you guys then. Take care.